All right, I'm on a roll here. Thought I might as well do another chapter of the Firewood tutorial for Wood Rookies 101, whatever it's called. Fence line clearing for cash crop farmers. Here in this part of southern Ontario, there's a lot of acreage being cash crop: corn, soybeans, canola some years, whatever the market wants. It can vary from year to year, it really doesn't matter. Most of this acreage is rented from the landowners and the fields managed by large cash croppers. The unmanaged trees that over the years and decades have grown on the fence line rows in the periphery and creep their way out from the swamps and bush lots, they're considered a nuisance as they shade the crops in the field. The resurgence of the Dutch elm disease and the devastation wrought over the last several years by the emergence of the emerald ash borer creates a problem for the cash croppers as the trees die on the fence lines, drop limbs, eventually entire trees out onto the fields. Other good firewoods as well flourish in these areas: black cherry and walnuts, both white and black, and a few others. Now here's the thing, the landowner doesn't care if the cash cropper is slowly losing some ground. He's getting tax concessions for the lands being farmed and a bit of money from the cash croppers. Now the cash cropper doesn't care about the long-term management of the fence rows. So once in a while we'll send a couple of young bucks out with a chainsaw and a front end loader maybe to push the stuff back off the fields into the fence rows. I won't bother getting into why this management strategy, if it can be called that, is a no-win for both parties in the long term. The thing is, there's a lot of good firewood to be had. The pickings really couldn't be easier. One guy, a saw, and a pickup truck's all you really need. Add a decent quad, another guy, maybe a small loader tractor, maybe yet another guy. I mean, are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it with commercial intent? You know, you want more wood. You're just working on the fence lines, no tight turns in the bush, no getting stuck or breaking equipment, no surprise boggy spots. It's really a cakewalk. Pretty hard to hang a tree up on a fence line. It can be as simple as one man, one saw, and an axe, or a splitter and tow perhaps. Or a little bigger if you want, like I just mentioned previously. You don't need big equipment. Even if there is a monster tree, you can drop it out into the field and deal with it. It's not like you need a log skidder, or a big four-wheel drive tractor or something. It's just out there in the field. Of course, your working window is in late fall or on after the crops have been harvested. The only downside is you have to keep a wary eye out for fence wires and nails and staples and the like. This is becoming increasingly less of a hazard as the years pass, and this method of fencing having gone the way of the dodo. There's just crops out there. There's no cows. Nobody's stringing barbed wire from tree to tree. You gotta watch for that stuff though. For personal use, you can approach the landowner who may or may not want something in return, depending, I suppose, to a large degree, whether he cares or not as to the management of his fence lines. Some people don't understand it. If you wanted to pursue this avenue with an eye towards commercial purposes, approaching the cash cropper is the way to go, as it solves an ongoing problem for him. The cash cropper, assuming he's interested, might give you a phone list for you to contact the landowners, or he might say, have at her, here's the locations. If anyone asks, you're there on my behalf. If that's the case, I'd still suggest you go do a meet and greet with the landowner for two reasons. Reason one is you're there on the cash cropper's ticket. You're really only supposed to be removing the already fallen and very soon to fall, not anything else really. Landowners used to seeing one or two cash cropper guys, not you, a strange face, hauling out firewood, because again, they just push it back. You need to inform the cash cropper that you're aware of these implications, and that you'll deal with them and the landowners accordingly as regards these issues. The second reason you want to be on good terms and straight up with the landowner is you can potentially get way more wood. There's a lot of standing dead, dying, junky culls and whatnot potentially to be had, as well as perhaps some other gravy, let's call it, about the place. Pocket of bush here, maybe a couple of dead or undesirable trees over there. Maybe the walking trails in this bush lot have become overgrown. You'd like them cleared out. You get the picture. You know, lots of little things to consider. Maybe this guy's just been waiting for a fellow like you to come along, saw in hand. This guy doesn't hang with us poor folk. Yeah, his buddies all own properties as well. Can open up some doors for you. So let me talk to you by way of summation as regards this chapter, with my last experience in fence line clearing. Although you could skip it as far as being purely informative goes, it's largely just me rambling on for my own reminiscent amusement. Whoa, I almost forgot bag firewood. Let me explain, that our government in its infinite wisdom has decreed that firewood must be sold in metric measurements. No face cords, no kitchen faces, certainly not by the truckload, definitely not by the truckload. They seem right particular about that. So if you stop, say, at the beer store with a load of wood on your truck and a fellow patron inquires if you would perhaps like to sell that load, be sure you clarify that, well, you can't by law sell them the truckload. You can sell them the approximately 2 cubic meters of wood on the truck. You don't have to have a definitive measurement, you just gotta refer to it in a metric measurement. Your fellow citizens, I'm sure, will be immensely relieved to discover his tax dollars aren't being squandered foolishly, and the populace as a whole is being diligently safeguarded from the inevitable breakdown of social order that selling firewood by the truckload must surely lead to. Oddly enough, the government site uses the industry standard of a bush cord being 128 cubic feet and lists no metric equivalent. In fact, the 128 cubic feet is the only measurement listed. But it's insistent it must not be sold as a bush cord. The site alludes to the heinousness of this crime being comparable, if not worse, than, say, selling crack in a grade school yard at recess. One might deduce so seriously that our government takes this. But the site makes no mention of possible fines or penalties, nor does it mention just who the firewood police are, what powers they possess, or what kind of technology they have at their disposal. I'm sure you'll sleep better tonight, knowing that our government isn't just squandering our tax dollars, at least as far as this issue is concerned. Point being, as to selling bagged wood. For years, the industry standard was a grain bag. I meant to have one. Get ahead of myself. A grain bag, which held a cubic foot of wood. Although, of course, we can't call it a cubic feet of wood. Currently here in southern Ontario, I see the market has been captured by an outfit whose name and location I'll not get into. Take a look at your name brand gas stations, big box stores, and the like. You'll see an orange open mesh bag that's commonly referred to as an onion bag, with an eensy teensy bit of small sticks. Okay, we'll get to that. Price a whopping $10.61 plus tax. For a while they had a little tag in there, and they had the wood defined as some quantity in a decameter. Decameter? Ask anybody what that is. They don't know. Centimeter, millimeter, meter. Yeah. The heck's a decameter? Looks to me like there's a little more than a half a cubic foot or whatever it is there. That's a pathetic count. You go broke trying to heat anything at that price. At first blush, the economics of selling bagged wood don't look too bad. Let's say you buy a face cord for $100. You get 32 grain bags, 32 cubic feet. What do we got here? You buy the face guard at $100, $70. Oh yeah, the green bags are available at your local farm supply for rounded up to $1 a piece. Your wood, your bags, total investment, $132. Sell them at $8 a piece. Say, hey, you know, that's, you know, 3 and some odd bucks cheaper and twice as much wood as your decameter little tiny bag is. Sell them at $8 each. Return $256. Gross profit, $124. I live on a 2-lane highway with good vehicular access and clean lines of sight. It's a provincial park 5 miles west and 3 private parks equally close by. Built a little hut out of the road with an honor box and developed a pretty brisk trade. The volume I was moving on long weekends was pretty impressive, really, as well as a steady 6 or so bags a day. First problem, theft. Second problem, thieves. Third problem, thievery. Bagging wood's a time-consuming annoyment. It gets old really fast. You're really just paying yourself a modest sum to perform an annoying task. In the past, I've also tried wholesaling the bagged wood. The annoyment level's the same. And you get less per bag, of course. Although it probably works out the same as retailing it at the street after the first, second, and third problems are factored in. Still, you're just paying yourself a few bucks for an annoying task. If, however, you have lesser quality wood, say poplar or pine, poplar or pine, the campers are quite content with this. For them, it's all about ambiance, not BTUs. I've found pine to be really well received by the campers. It's got plenty of snap, crackle, and pop, as well as that Timothy Leary light show thing, you know, going on in the flames. Martha, I think I'm having a flashback. Look at the colors. Ooh. Most of them don't cook on it, because you cook on the poplar, you should be cooking on hardwood. You don't want to cook on the pines with the pitchwoods. That flavors things bad, but again, they're not doing that. They got propane Barbies. Okay, so we've done the fence line clearing thing. Now, buying a load of logs. Yeah, the fundamental question is, how many bush cords can I expect to get from my load? Followed by what type of wood or woods, and what the load will cost. Well, alas, those pesky variables again. Can only then tell you as to my limited experiences. Let's start with where the wood starts, in the bush, where the loggers are cutting timber for building grade wood, logs, veneer, perhaps. The logs are graded into lumber grade, pulp grade, and firewood grade, and piled accordingly. Logging trucks scurry back and forth like ants with the graded logs headed to their respective destinations. The firewood logs we're interested in are, amongst other reasons, too small, too crooked, too twisted, or perhaps too tapered to be viable for lumber. And of course, yet again, those pesky variables. How many bush cords will I get from a tandem load of logs? First, I'll explain a tandem load. That's a truck and trailer, often referred to as a pup behind it. Both truck and pup carry logs in 16-foot lengths. How many bush cords and what will I pay? Well, what you'll pay can and will vary widely. Mostly this is more about how far the truck travels from the bush to you. Also, the fellow selling you the load's no dummy. He knows pretty well what's on his load from day to day as the overall quality of the wood will, of course, vary. What grows on the hillside? You know, is it beech, maple, what's there? So wherever you are in your proximity to where the logs are loaded and the mix on the load, well, all you can do is shop around as the price. Okay, so not having answered the price question for you, let me sort of answer how many bush cords Well, let me sort of not answer. How many bush cords you can expect? True personal story here. When I was considering buying my first tandem load, I asked around. 12, 14 maybe, but not likely 16 bush cords was the general consensus. Whoa, pretty wide window at that, eh? 12 to 16, you know. So I got on the phone and began to shop around. The questions were how much, what's the wood, and how many bush, realizing, of course, you, the seller, can't answer that definitively. The first three guys answered to the volume question to the effect of, 13, maybe 14, 14 and a half bush, you know. The fourth guy said 10 to 12 is average. Anything over that's pretty much a bonus. How's that, I asked. The last three guys I was just talking to said, 12, 13, 14. Talks cheap, ain't it, he said. I've been hauling logs for years. I have my own lot, a couple of guys processing firewood. If you want to load for me, I can guarantee you won't get less than 10, because I'll load it my own self from my lot. I found my guy here, I said. My lot's easy and safe for your rig to get into. I'm sure cash works for you. What do you got? How much is it? He had some choices. I could buy a load of pure silver maple, lower end stuff. Get a mixed load with, I'd have beech, beautiful wood. Maple, sugar maple, not silver maple, red maple. Anyways, what do I want to pay? Varied. I could go from $200 to $2,500. So I bought a load off him. I kept careful track of what I got in the end. 13 and a half bush cord. And I've been dealing with them ever since. So you really can't know what your count and hence the cost per wood is until you've processed it all. You gotta keep, you're not gonna do it in a weekend. You gotta keep a book. Keep careful track. It's easy to forget. You went out for a few hours here and there, or your buddy came by. This particular, guess I kind of got ahead of myself. This particular individual can usually offer me a choice in quality and hence price, as he has his own lot. I sort of said that already. This may not always be the case, as some guys may be limited to hauling it straight from the bush. So, and he isn't loading it. They just, the loader operator wants to get those trucks loaded and get them out. You can get a really crappy load. To summate, I'd say use 12 bush cords as a safe average to base your math on. If you're curious, my last load worked out to $160 a bush cord, or $40 a face if you prefer. And this sounds like a good deal, as currently a face cord around here is best possible price, $100 to $150. Okay, tune into my next installment. We might as well do that right here. Okay. If you come to the point where you're considering procuring a load of logs, the issue of space is the first consideration. How much space? About an acre, I'd say. Realize the tandem truckload has to be able to jockey about as well. The average suburban yard is not an option. How long will it take me to reduce that intimidatingly large pile of logs into pieces that fit my stove? Well, there's those pesky variables again. Rather than ramble on about them, I'll just go to my own experience. Now, at this point I need to bring to light something I haven't mentioned in any previous videos. And that is, I worked professionally for a number of years as a feller cutter. I did my time. I was a rookie, a crow, a ditch bunny, and for 4 or 5 years I was Firewood Fred. And on a few occasions I've been a hired gun, so to speak, in someone else's employ. That said, we'll go to the processing costs of the last load of logs I bought and processed. I own a professional quality saw. Replacement costs well over $1,000, and I know how to use it. not tooting my own horn here. I could do a series of videos on all the things I've learned the hard way. I've got a buddy I learn from every time I watch him just start a saw. I watch a bunch of guys on YouTube who are so good I take notes. That said, I do know how to safely and proficiently run a saw. I also own a 20-ton log splitter, a couple of good axes and a cant hook, which by the way is a really cool must-have if you're going to do anything with logs. Also at my disposal is my faithful little 8-end tractor with a loader on the front, and a home-built contraption on the back that I use to move the processed wood about. Cutting it for myself, I'm not selling it. Now, put your saw, fuel, bar oil, and an axe into a wheelbarrow and stand looking up at your tandem load of logs. Yeah. I'll bet you're going to want a splitter and at least a quad. I just consulted my notes on the last load of logs I processed. 13 bush cords, purchase price $2,000. I paid myself 25 bucks an hour gross for labor. Now that's 15 bucks an hour net after fuel and bar oil costs. And realize that at these figures, I'm not amortizing any equipment costs. Saw, tractor, blah, blah, blah. So let's stop here and have a look at what I've invested in equipment. How's that show? I don't know. Chainsaw, 1,300 bucks. Splitter, 1,200. Tractor, 35. My load of logs, it's like 8,000 bucks. That's a fair investment to buy myself a job that in essence pays 15 bucks an hour. Again, I've not amortized the equipment costs in there. So to summate labor costs on my last load, and underbuild at that, double my purchase price from $1.60 a bush to 320 bucks. And I haven't factored in beer costs there either. At this site, same time I could have purchased bush cords, cut, split, and delivered for 450 bucks on average. Maybe even 400 with some hunting. 500 bucks from the big box store. So I got all this money and everything wrapped up and save 80 bucks. Well, that's it pretty much for this go around. Resist the impulse to cut at the top of the pile. You know, should you decide to buy a load of logs. If you buy a half load, you don't have to buy a tandem load, but being as the bulk of what you're paying for the trucking is, you might as well go for the tandem load if you've got the room. Resist the impulse to cut at the top of the pile. Keep your footing clear and your boots legs tight when you roll the logs down. Don't use a bar any longer than your biggest log, if even that. You do know the possible consequences of tipping your blade, right? If you didn't nod here, you're not ready for a load of logs, my friend. Well, that's all the time I can spare. Back to the laboratory to work on the bait for to trap one of them wood elves I am. Thanks again. We'll be back.